She humiliated me before 20 alien species. Then she summoned me at midnight. Captain Ethan Hayes had always been proud to represent Earth. He had worked hard to earn his position as Earth's lead diplomat among the stars, and he took every mission seriously. The galaxy, with its 21 species, was a vast, complicated web of politics, power plays, and deeply ingrained traditions. As humanity's voice in these intergalactic affairs, Ethan was tasked with ensuring Earth's place in the greater galactic community. Today, however, things were not going as planned. Ethan stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council's flagship, facing a sea of alien faces. The atmosphere was tense, filled with quiet murmurs as the various species observed the Earth representative. Ethan could feel their eyes on him, their judgment seeping into the very air. Today, Earth's future would be decided, and the weight of that responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. His mission was simple: to secure Earth's alliance with the powerful Drethian Empire. The Drethians were one of the most respected species in the galaxy, known for their technological advancements and military strength. If Earth could gain their trust, it would solidify humanity's standing among the stars. But to achieve that, Ethan needed to show them that humanity was worthy of their respect. He had prepared for weeks, studying the Drethian culture, understanding their traditions, and learning their language. He was ready. The chamber before him was magnificent, with intricate carvings on the walls, glowing symbols that shifted with the movement of the light, and a large platform in the center, raised above the others. On that platform stood Princess Solara of the Drethian Empire. She was a figure of both elegance and power, with sharp features and an unyielding gaze. Her eyes, a piercing shade of violet, seemed to see right through him, as if she could sense his every thought. She was the one who would decide Earth's fate, and she was not an easy person to impress. Ethan cleared his throat, taking a deep breath to steady himself. The room grew silent as he stepped forward, walking toward the platform where Solara waited. As he spoke, he did his best to keep his voice strong and confident. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," he began, his words firm but respectful, "I stand before you today as the representative of Earth, a young but proud species. We seek to join your ranks, not as a threat but as an ally. We offer our resources, our knowledge, and our commitment to peace." He paused for a moment, scanning the faces of the various species in the audience. Most of them appeared indifferent, but a few were watching him with interest. He could see the faces of the Drethians in the crowd, their expressions unreadable, but Solara's gaze never wavered from him. Her piercing eyes were fixed on him, calculating, observing. Ethan had practiced this speech many times, but now, under the pressure of the moment, his words seemed to fall flat. The silence in the room grew heavier. His heart pounded in his chest, but he pushed through, continuing to speak about Earth's strengths, their contributions to the galaxy, and their commitment to peace and cooperation. It wasn't until he mentioned the potential benefits of a Drethian-Earth alliance that the atmosphere shifted. Princess Solara's lips curled into a slight, almost imperceptible smile. Ethan didn't know why, but something about that smile made him uneasy. "Captain Hayes," Solara's voice cut through the air, smooth and cold. "While your words are reasonable, they lack something important." She took a step forward, her voice rising with each word. "You stand here speaking of your planet's greatness as if you are the center of the universe, but you fail to understand the one thing that matters most to the galaxy: respect." The words stung, but Ethan kept his composure. He had expected challenges. He had prepared for Solara's sharp tongue. However, he had not prepared for the mockery that came next. Solara raised a hand, and with a simple gesture, the entire council room was flooded with holographic images, images of Earth's past mistakes. There were visuals of Earth's wars, environmental destruction, and violent conflicts. The images spun around him, one after the other, each more damning than the last. Ethan felt a wave of heat rise to his face as his own people's mistakes were thrown in his face. "And you expect us to trust a species so immature?" Solara's voice was icy, and her words echoed in the vast chamber. "A species that can barely keep its own planet in order. You have no place here, Captain Hayes." "And you," she said, turning to face the council members, "will do well to remember that." The room was deathly silent, and Ethan felt the heat of embarrassment burning his skin. His heart raced, and his mind screamed for a way to escape the situation. This was a public humiliation, orchestrated with precision and cruelty. Every word that Solara spoke felt like a hammer pounding his reputation into dust. But it wasn't just him she had humiliated. She had humiliated humanity, casting Earth's entire future in the hands of the Council's judgment. Ethan's pride, his sense of duty, all crumbled in an instant. He had been made a fool in front of everyone. As the images faded and the silence grew thick, Solara turned her back on him, dismissing him without a second thought. "Leave," she commanded. Ethan stood there for a moment, unable to move. He had no words to defend himself, no rebuttal. His chest felt heavy, and his throat was tight. The whispers of the alien species around him grew louder as he stood there, frozen, with the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. It was clear that Solara's plan had worked. She had crushed him in front of the entire galaxy, and now he was nothing more than a failure. The humiliation was so overwhelming that he could barely process it. He forced himself to turn and walk away, his steps slow and heavy as he exited the council chamber. The door slid shut behind him with a finality that echoed in his ears. Outside, the bright corridors of the flagship seemed to mock him, their clean, sterile walls contrasting with the mess of his thoughts. Ethan was alone. His crew, his fellow diplomats, had all turned their backs on him. No one would dare approach him, not after the way Solara had publicly discredited him. He retreated to his quarters, the door sliding shut behind him with a sense of finality. The silence in his room was suffocating. The weight of failure settled in his chest like a stone. He had let everyone down. The Council would never trust Earth now, and his career was as good as over. Then, just as he was about to sink into the darkness of his thoughts, his communicator beeped, snapping him out of his daze. It was a private message. He didn't recognize the sender, but the message was clear. "Princess Solara requests your presence at midnight. She will meet you in the central garden." Ethan stared at the screen, confused. After everything that had just happened, why would Solara want to speak with him again? Was it some kind of trick, a further humiliation, or was there something more at play? He didn't know, but curiosity gnawed at him. The pride of humanity had been shattered, but perhaps there was still a chance for redemption. With a sigh, he stood up, straightening his uniform. If Solara wanted to speak with him, he would go. He had nothing left to lose. The hum of the spaceship's engines was the only sound as Captain Ethan Hayes walked through the silent, gleaming halls of the Galactic Council flagship. Every step he took seemed to echo, reminding him of the weight of his humiliation. He could still hear Solara's words in his mind, sharp and cutting, the way she had mocked Earth and everything he stood for. The images she had shown, Earth's past mistakes, flashed through his mind again, reminding him how small humanity seemed in the vastness of the galaxy. Yet, despite everything, he felt the pull of the summons. Solara had requested him to meet her in the central garden, a lush space located in the heart of the flagship. It was a place that seemed out of place in a ship designed for diplomacy and military might. The garden was an artificial paradise, a space filled with glowing plants, cascading waterfalls, and the soft glow of distant stars shining through large windows. It was peaceful, serene, and for the first time since his arrival on the ship, Ethan felt a sense of calm. He walked down the long corridor that led to the garden, his boots tapping softly on the polished floor. It was late, almost midnight, and the halls were mostly empty. He passed the few crew members still awake, their faces solemn, as if they too knew the outcome of his meeting with the Drethians had already been decided. Some of them avoided his gaze, while others offered a brief nod of acknowledgement. No one spoke. When he reached the garden, the door slid open silently, revealing the lush, glowing space inside. The air was fresh with the scent of alien flowers and the cool breeze that wafted in from the large windows. It was a stark contrast to the sterile, metallic corridors outside. But more importantly, it was the first place he had felt even a hint of peace since the disaster of the council meeting. Solara was already there, standing by the glowing fountain at the center of the garden. The soft light from the plants cast an ethereal glow on her figure, making her appear almost otherworldly. She was no longer the mocking princess who had humiliated him in front of the council. Her posture was different now, more relaxed, but still regal. As Ethan stepped into the garden, she turned to face him, her violet eyes meeting his with an expression that was difficult to read. "Captain Hayes," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "I'm glad you came." Ethan hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. After the public humiliation, after the way she had crushed him before the entire galaxy, He didn't know if he should be angry, confused, or even grateful. What was the purpose of this meeting? Did she want to rub salt in his wounds, or was there something else behind her invitation? "I didn't expect you to call me here after everything," Ethan said, his voice steady, but his anger barely contained. "Why? After what you did in front of the council, what do you want from me?" Solara's gaze softened, and she stepped closer to him, the space between them shrinking with each movement. "I know you're angry and you have every right to be. What I did was necessary." "But it wasn't personal, Captain Hayes." Ethan raised an eyebrow, his skepticism evident. "Necessary? You humiliated me. You humiliated Earth, and you did it in front of the entire council. How is that necessary?" Solara didn't flinch, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something that resembled regret, though it was quickly masked. "I needed to see how you would react. It's not just your planet I'm concerned about. It's the future of the galaxy. And right now, the galaxy is on the brink of war." Ethan frowned, confused. "What do you mean, war? What does Earth have to do with this?" Solara took a deep breath, her posture shifting slightly as she began to speak with more urgency. "There are forces in the galaxy, forces far more dangerous than you realize, that are conspiring to tear apart everything we've worked for. And we're running out of time. The peace of the entire galaxy is at stake, and Earth's involvement could tip the balance." Ethan's mind raced as he tried to process what she was saying. "What does this have to do with me? Why do you need me?" Solara's gaze never wavered. "You, Captain Hayes, are not just a diplomat. You are someone who understands how to negotiate under pressure, how to broker peace when everyone else sees only war. I needed to see if you had the courage to stand up when everything was falling apart. And I needed to know if you would remain true to your people, even when it seemed like all was lost." Ethan stood still for a moment, taking in her words. The anger that had boiled in him earlier began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of confusion and curiosity. "You did all this to test me, to see if I was worthy." "Not just you, Captain. I tested Earth," Solara said, her voice steady now. "I needed to know if your people are capable of handling the responsibility that comes with the alliance we've been discussing. If you can't handle this, if you can't hold your ground when the pressure is at its peak, then the Drethian Empire cannot afford to ally with you." Ethan felt a flicker of frustration again. "So this whole time, this entire meeting, it was just a test?" "In a way, yes," Solara admitted. "But it was also a warning. The Drethian Empire is at a breaking point. We're facing internal unrest, and the stability of our government is threatened by those who seek to overthrow us. If Earth is to be our ally, we need to know that you can withstand the weight of real power, and we need to know that you'll help us when the time comes." The gravity of her words hit Ethan harder than he expected. It was not just a matter of diplomacy. This was about survival both for Earth and for the Drethian Empire. He could see now why Solara had pushed him so hard, why she had humiliated him in front of the council. She had been testing him, yes, but it was also clear that she had no other choice. Ethan swallowed hard. "What do you want me to do now?" Solara's eyes flickered with something he couldn't quite read. "We need your help, Captain Hayes. We need to form an alliance that is stronger than any political ties. We need you to help us navigate the storm that's coming. The galaxy is on the brink of war, and the only way to stop it is through a fragile alliance of those who are willing to stand together. But it can only work if humanity plays a part." Ethan paused, taking a long, deep breath. He was no longer just an ambassador or a diplomat. He was about to become something far greater, something that would change the course of his people's history. It was not just about Earth anymore. It was about the survival of the galaxy itself. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady, filled with newfound determination. "I'll help you. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure the galaxy doesn't fall apart." Solara gave him a slight nod, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of respect and something more, perhaps trust. "Good. Then we begin tonight." As the garden's artificial stars glowed above them, Ethan realized that this meeting, this strange and humbling encounter, had changed everything. No longer was he the defeated captain, humiliated before the galaxy. He was a man on the brink of something far larger than he could have ever imagined. And whatever came next, he would stand with Solara for the galaxy. Ethan woke to the soft glow of the artificial sun, a signal that it was time to begin another day aboard the Galactic Council flagship. But today was different. Yesterday's events, the humiliation, the strange midnight summons, had changed something within him. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, and the quiet hum of the ship now felt like a distant background to the storm brewing in the galaxy. The message from Solara was still fresh in his mind. They had agreed to form a secret alliance, one that could potentially change the future of the galaxy. The Drethian Empire, one of the most powerful in the galaxy, was on the brink of collapse, and Earth might be the key to saving them. But Ethan had no illusions. He was no longer just a diplomat. He had become an active participant in something much bigger than himself. Something dangerous. He stepped into the ship's common area where a handful of crew members moved about, working on various tasks. They avoided his gaze, as if they already knew what had happened during the meeting with the Drethian Council. No one spoke to him, and Ethan didn't feel the need to speak to anyone. His mind was consumed by the alliance he had agreed to, and the risks involved were growing clearer by the minute. "Captain," a familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Sarah Kent, his second-in-command, approaching him with a respectful nod. "Lieutenant," Ethan greeted her, trying to mask the tiredness in his voice. "What's the news?" "The council is expecting an update from you today," she said, her face a mixture of concern and curiosity. "And there are whispers about your meeting with Princess Solara. People are talking." Ethan hesitated. "What are they saying?" Sarah lowered her voice. "They're saying she humiliated you, that you failed the council. But I know that's not true, Captain. You've always been one of the strongest leaders we have." Ethan gave a tight smile. "It doesn't matter. What matters is what happens next." Sarah watched him for a moment, her eyes searching his face. "I don't understand. What happens next? After everything you've been through, why are you still working with her? The Drethians don't want peace, they want control." Ethan felt a surge of anger, but he kept it in check. "You're right, the Drethians want control, but Solara, she's different. She has no choice but to fight for her people, and right now she needs our help." Sarah shook her head. "I don't trust her. I've seen the way they operate. This isn't some diplomatic mission, Captain. This is a war." Ethan stood silent for a moment, weighing her words, but he couldn't deny the truth in them. He had seen the same signs, the tension in Solara's voice, the way her eyes had burned with determination. She was playing a dangerous game, one that had the potential to destroy both Earth and the Drethian Empire if it failed. "I don't trust her completely either, Sarah," he said quietly. "But I trust Earth's survival, and right now we don't have many options." Sarah nodded reluctantly, though her eyes were still filled with doubt. "Just be careful, Captain. I'll support you whatever you decide, but don't lose yourself in this." Ethan gave a nod of appreciation. "I won't." As Sarah walked away, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the edge of something far greater than he had ever anticipated. The more he thought about it, the more the urgency of Solara's situation became clear. The galaxy was fractured, its power structures weakening with every passing day. If the Drethians fell, there was no telling what would happen next. Worse, if the wrong factions gained control, it could spark a war that would leave Earth, and countless other species, destroyed in its wake. But the deeper Ethan dug into Solara's request, the more he realized that their alliance, fragile as it was only the first step. There were more dangers than just the Drethian Empire's internal strife. The real threat lay beyond the borders of the Empire, in the growing unrest among the galaxy's most war-hungry factions. The following day, after a brief meeting with his senior officers, Ethan found himself once again in Solara's private quarters aboard the flagship. The ship was alive with activity as preparations for the peace talks continued, but the princess's private chambers remained a quiet, isolated space, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Solara was standing by the large window, her back to him. The faint light from the stars outside cast shadows across her figure, making her look like a statue carved from the very fabric of the galaxy itself. Her violet eyes shimmered as they glanced back at him, but there was no hint of mockery in her expression. This time there was something vulnerable in the way she held herself. Ethan stepped forward slowly, his boots clicking on the polished floor as he spoke. "You wanted to see me, Princess?" he asked, his tone cautious but firm. Solara turned to face him, her gaze unwavering. "I've been thinking about what happens next. We're close to finalizing the terms of the alliance, but I can't do it alone. We'll need to gather support from the other factions. And that's where you come in, Captain." Ethan frowned. "How can we gather support when most of the galaxy distrusts the Drethian Empire?" Solara's eyes narrowed, her expression intense. "Because we have something they want, humanity. Earth's resources, your strategic position in the galaxy, your military strength. And perhaps most importantly, your ability to remain calm under pressure. You've shown that you can think outside the box when faced with adversity. I need you to use that skill to build an alliance, not just with the Drethians, but with the other factions who will decide the future of the galaxy. Ethan crossed his arms, contemplating her words. He could feel the weight of what she was asking him to do. This was no longer a simple diplomatic mission. This was a power play, a game of survival for both Earth and the Drethian Empire. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice steady. Solara smiled, a rare, almost unreadable expression. "I want you to convince the Zarath Dominion, the Vrogan Collective, and the Selari Hegemony to support us. If we can convince them that the Drethian Empire is the key to stabilizing the galaxy, then we will have a chance at peace." Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The factions Solara had named were the most powerful in the galaxy, but they were also the most unpredictable. The Zarath Dominion, a race of brutal warriors, would never align themselves with the Drethians without something major in return. The Vrogan Collective, a species of hive-minded engineers, were skeptical of any political alliance. And the Selari Hegemony, a race of intellectuals, prided themselves on neutrality, something that made them difficult to persuade. "I'll need time to prepare," Ethan said after a long pause. "I can't do this alone. I'll need Earth's support and the help of the Council." Solara nodded. "You'll have it, but time is running out. We have only weeks before the unrest in the galaxy escalates. If we don't act quickly, it could be too late." Ethan turned toward the door, his mind racing. The alliance was fragile, and the stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. If he failed, Earth and the Drethian Empire might both fall, along with any hope for peace in the galaxy. As he left Solara's quarters, Ethan realized just how much had changed. He was no longer just representing Earth. He was part of something far larger, a delicate web of alliances and power plays that could decide the fate of the galaxy. The risks were unimaginable, but so was the potential for success. The galaxy's future depended on his decisions, and the path forward was anything but certain. The weight of the task ahead settled on Ethan's shoulders like a stone. The day after his meeting with Solara, he found himself pacing the narrow confines of his quarters. Outside, the cold light of distant stars filtered through the ship's windows, casting long shadows across the walls. He had never felt this isolated before, even though he was surrounded by a crew that respected him. It wasn't just the pressure of the mission. Something deeper gnawed at him. He was no longer just a representative of Earth. Now he was a key player in a game of galactic power, and every move he made could determine the fate of millions. The Drethian Empire was on the edge of collapse. The fragile peace between the various galactic factions teetered on the brink of destruction. The message was clear. Either they succeeded, or the galaxy would descend into chaos. Ethan knew this was no longer just about diplomacy or strategy. This was about survival. As he prepared for the upcoming summit with the alien factions that had the power to shape the future, his thoughts turned to Solara. Despite the history between them, despite the way she had humiliated him in front of the council, he found himself respecting her more with each passing day. She wasn't the arrogant princess he had first assumed her to be. Solara was fighting for her people's survival, just as much as he was fighting for Earth's future. The first faction he had to approach was the Zarath Dominion, a fierce and war-hungry species known for their brutal tactics and military strength. Ethan had already done his research on them. He knew that the Zarath didn't trust the Drethian Empire, and he knew that to win their favor, he would need to offer something they valued. That's when General Terk, the leader of the Zarath Dominion, agreed to meet with him. Ethan knew this was a rare opportunity. The Zarath never gave their trust lightly, and their support could mean the difference between peace and war. As he entered the Zarath embassy on the flagship, he was met with cold stares. The Zarath were massive, their muscular frames towering over him. Their reptilian skin shimmered in the dim light, and their sharp claws tapped on the floor with every step they took. General Terk stood in the center of the room, his eyes scanning Ethan with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Captain Hayes," General Terk's voice was deep and gravelly, like the sound of stones scraping against each other. "I hear you've come to beg for our support." Ethan stood his ground, though his nerves were on edge. He wasn't here to beg, he was here to negotiate. He took a deep breath, knowing this would not be easy. "I've come to offer you a partnership," Ethan said, his voice firm but respectful. "The Drethian Empire is weakening, and if you don't act now, you'll lose everything. The galaxy needs a strong force to keep the peace, and the Zarath Dominion could be that force. But that will only happen if we stand together." General Terk scoffed, a low rumble in his throat. "We don't need the Drethians or your Earthling alliances. We have strength, we have power, we fight for our own future." "I understand that," Ethan said, keeping his tone calm. "But strength alone won't keep you safe from the forces that are rising up against you. The galaxy is on the brink of chaos, General. The factions that seek to overthrow the Drethians won't stop there. They'll come for you next." Terk's eyes narrowed. Ethan could see that he had hit a nerve. The Zarath valued strength above all else, but even they understood the importance of unity in the face of common threats. "We have our own plans," Terk growled. "But if you want us to ally with the Drethians, you'd better show us something that matters. Strength, like you said." Ethan stepped closer, leaning forward slightly. "What do you want, General?" Terk paused, his gaze piercing. "The Drethians have something we need, technology. They have weapons that we've long sought, weapons that could make us the dominant power in the galaxy. Bring us a demonstration of that power and you'll have our support." Ethan's mind raced. He knew the Drethians possessed advanced technology, but he hadn't expected to make such a direct offer so soon. This was a delicate moment. One wrong move could destroy everything. "I'll speak with Solara," Ethan said finally, his decision made. "But you must promise to act swiftly once the demonstration is complete. We can't afford delays." Terk nodded, his lips curling into a smile that wasn't entirely reassuring. "You'll get your demonstration, and when you do, we'll be ready to fight." The meeting ended on a tense note. Ethan left the Zarath embassy feeling the weight of what had just transpired. He had secured their support, but at what cost? The Zarath were dangerous, and their lust for power could quickly spiral out of control. If things went wrong, the entire alliance would be at risk. The next faction to approach was the Vrogan Collective, a race of hive-minded engineers whose technological expertise was unrivaled. The Vrogans weren't interested in power or conquest. They valued knowledge and innovation. Ethan knew that the Vrogans wouldn't join an alliance based on force or military might alone. He would have to offer them something more. The meeting took place in one of the Vrogans' massive laboratories, a place filled with strange, intricate machines and designs that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The Vrogans were a strange species, tall insected beings with multiple arms, large compound eyes, and a deep collective intelligence. The leader of the Vrogan Collective, Advisor Krell, was waiting for him when he arrived. Krell's many eyes scanned Ethan as he entered, and the air felt charged with the hum of 1,000 complex thoughts. "Captain Hayes," Krell's voice was soothing, almost hypnotic. "We have been following your progress. You are attempting to forge alliances with a species that is still learning to govern itself. Tell me, why should we trust you? What can you offer us?" Ethan was prepared for this. He knew that the Vrogans didn't want to hear about military strength or political power. They wanted something more. "We have technology," Ethan began, "but more than that, we have a willingness to learn. We understand the need for innovation and progress. Earth has the potential to be a great partner to the Vrogan Collective. Together, we can push the boundaries of what is possible." Krell's many eyes narrowed, studying him closely. "And what do you want from us in return?" "Knowledge," Ethan said. "We want to learn from you. Earth has barely scratched the surface when it comes to scientific progress. The Drethian Empire may have weapons, but they lack the same level of innovation. If we work together, we can create technology that benefits us all." Krell seemed to consider this for a moment. Finally, he spoke. "Very well, we will help you. But remember, Captain Hayes, this is not an alliance born of power or strength. This is an alliance born of mutual benefit. We will share knowledge, but we expect the same in return." Ethan nodded. "Agreed, we'll work together. The galaxy needs us to." The Vrogans' support was invaluable, but Ethan knew that the true test was still ahead. The Selari hegemony, the last faction he needed to persuade, was the most difficult of them all. The Selari were known for their neutrality, priding themselves on remaining outside the conflicts of the galaxy. They were intellectuals, philosophers, and diplomats, and convincing them to join an alliance based on anything other than ideology would be a monumental challenge. Ethan had one chance to make his case. He met with High Chancellor Varro, the leader of the Selari, in the council chamber of the hegemony's flagship. The room was stark and simple, reflecting the Selari's values of clarity and truth. Varro was an older being with pale blue skin and a calm, measured demeanor. "Captain Hayes," Varro's voice was calm but firm. "I am curious. Why should the Selari, the keepers of knowledge and peace, ally themselves with the Drethians? What is it that you seek from us?" Ethan took a deep breath, knowing this would be his toughest challenge. "The galaxy is changing, Chancellor. Peace can no longer be maintained by neutrality alone. The galaxy is fractured, and if we don't act now, it will descend into war. The Drethians are not perfect, but they are the key to keeping peace. Together, we can bring stability to the galaxy. We can build a future based on cooperation rather than conflict." Varro studied him carefully, then finally nodded. "Very well, Captain Hayes. We will support your cause. But know this, we do so not because we seek power, but because we believe that cooperation is the only path forward." With the support of the Zarath Dominion, the Vrogan Collective, and the Selari Hegemony, Ethan felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. But the Ethan sat in his quarters aboard the Galactic Council flagship, staring at the message on his screen. The words were simple, but they held weight beyond anything he had ever experienced. The alliance was ready. It had taken everything he had to reach this point: the meetings with the Zarath Dominion, the Vrogan Collective, and the Selari Hegemony. Each negotiation had been difficult, testing his patience, his skills, and his ability to remain calm under pressure. The factions had all demanded something in return: technology, power, or knowledge, but Ethan had delivered. And now, with their support, humanity had a place among the stars. He had become a leader not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. But the work wasn't done. The real challenge lay ahead. The Drethian Empire still stood on the edge of collapse, and the factions they had allied with were only willing to help if they saw a tangible benefit. The peace talks, the fragile alliances, they all depended on one thing now: trust. And trust was something that had to be earned, something that could be broken in an instant. As he stood from his desk, Ethan felt the weight of that responsibility settle deeper in his chest. The fate of the galaxy, the future of Earth, and the Drethian Empire rested in his hands. He wasn't alone, though. There was Solara standing beside him. Despite everything that had happened, despite the way she had humiliated him in front of the council, despite the tension that had marked their early relationship, Ethan knew that Solara was as committed to the alliance as he was. The Drethians had been through too much, and if they didn't find a way to survive, everything they had fought for would be lost. Solara had changed over the past few weeks. She wasn't the cold, calculating princess who had tested him at every turn. No, she had become someone he could rely on, a partner in every sense of the word. They had fought together, struggled together, and now they had a chance to save the galaxy together. He left his quarters and made his way to the Drethian War Room, a large, dimly lit space filled with maps of the galaxy, holographic displays, and strategists from all factions. Solara was already there, her eyes scanning the data on the table in front of her. "Captain Hayes," she greeted him without looking up. Her tone was calm, but there was an edge of anticipation in it. "The representatives from the Zarath Dominion, the Vrogan Collective, and the Selari Hegemony are waiting for us. We're ready to begin." Ethan nodded, stepping closer to her. "I'm ready too. Let's make this happen." They gathered around the holographic table, the leaders of the allied factions joining them. General Terk of the Zarath Dominion stood tall, his reptilian eyes narrowed in focus. Advisor Krell of the Vrogan Collective hovered nearby, his many arms folded in thought. Chancellor Varro of the Selari Hegemony was seated at the table, his calm demeanor never betraying the intensity of the moment. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of the situation was clear to all of them. They were about to make a decision that could either stabilize the galaxy or send it into a war that could destroy everything. Solara broke the silence. "We have reached a critical point. The Drethian Empire stands on the edge of collapse, and if we fail, everything we've fought for will be lost. Our enemies are already mobilizing, and the galaxy's future depends on us standing together. But we cannot do this alone. We need every one of you to take this step with us." Her voice was steady, but Ethan could see the strain in her eyes. This wasn't just about politics anymore. This was personal. Solara's people, her empire, were fighting for their survival. And if she failed, the repercussions would be felt by everyone, especially Earth. General Terk was the first to speak. His voice was deep and gravelly, but there was a note of respect in it that hadn't been there before. "We will stand with you, Drethian. The Zarath Dominion will fight by your side. But know this, the galaxy will never forget who stood with us and who didn't." Ethan glanced at Solara, who gave him a small nod. They had won the Zarath's support, but their loyalty was fragile. The Zarath were a people who valued strength above all else, and their alliance had been forged through a show of power. If the Drethians didn't hold up their end of the bargain, they wouldn't hesitate to turn against them. "We've come a long way," Ethan said, his voice steady. "But we still have work to do. Our enemies won't wait for us to be ready. We need to act quickly. And when we do, we need to ensure that this alliance holds strong, no matter what." Advisor Krell of the Vrogan Collective spoke next, his many eyes focusing on the table's glowing map. "The Vrogans have agreed to share our technology with you, Drethian, but this cannot be a one-sided arrangement. We demand a seat at the table, not just as allies, but as partners in the future of the galaxy. If we are to ensure peace, we must be involved in every decision. We will not support a system that excludes us." "We understand," Solara replied, "and you will have it. We are all in this together, and your knowledge is invaluable to us. The Drethians will work with you, not above you." The tension in the room eased slightly as the Vrogans gave their silent approval. They had always been hesitant to align themselves with others, preferring to operate independently, but Solara's words had struck the right chord. They needed each other now, and the alliances they had formed were not just temporary. This was the beginning of something bigger. Chancellor Varro, ever the calm voice of reason, finally spoke. "We have heard your words, Drethian, and we have seen the strength of your commitment to this alliance. The Selari will support your efforts. We believe that peace can only be achieved through cooperation, and we are willing to stand with you to ensure that the galaxy does not descend into chaos." Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. The Selari were known for their neutrality, their ability to remain detached from the galaxy's conflicts. If they were willing to join the alliance, then it meant that the other factions would follow suit. This was the turning point they had been waiting for. But there was no time to celebrate. The war was still coming. The factions that opposed the Drethians, those who sought to bring the Empire to its knees, were not going to back down. Ethan could see the shadow of war looming on the horizon, but now, with the combined strength of their new allies, they had a fighting chance. "The time for diplomacy is over," Solara said, her voice low but firm. "We have a choice to make. We either stand together and fight for a future, or we fall apart and let the galaxy burn. I choose to fight." Ethan stood beside her, his heart pounding with determination. "Then we fight, together." The room fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. They had made their choice. Now it was time to act. As the meeting came to an end, Ethan stepped outside with Solara, his mind racing. The alliance had been formed, but the hard part was just beginning. They would have to fight on multiple fronts, both on the battlefield and within the political sphere. But for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt a spark of hope. The galaxy was full of dangers, but with the right allies, they could face them together. Solara turned to him as they walked down the hallway. "You did it, Captain Hayes, we did it." Ethan glanced at her, surprised by the warmth in her voice. "We still have a long way to go." She smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her in days. "We'll make it together." As they walked toward the command center, Ethan couldn't help but feel that they were on the brink of something greater. This wasn't just about saving the Drethian Empire or Earth. It was about the survival of the galaxy. And for the first time, he truly believed that they had a chance. The galaxy had been fractured, divided by distrust and fear. But now, the pieces were coming together. And in the distance, Ethan could see the first rays of a new dawn.